Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bonnie Vandermeulen, Training Coordinator for Wisconsin Facets. On behalf of our entire Wisconsin Facets staff, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Our webinar today is entitled Graduation for All, a Team Approach to Graduation, Tools to Improve the Graduation Rate of Students with Disabilities. Our presenter today is Jen Hilgendorf. Jen serves as the statewide Indicator 1 and 2 coordinator and also supports school districts in CESA 1. Jen holds a bachelor's degree in both regular and special education. She has a master's degree in administrative leadership and higher education administration. Jen has been working in the field of education for 12 years. She has worked in urban, suburban, and rural school districts and has worked with students ranging from middle school to post-high school. And is committed to increasing post-school outcomes for students with disabilities relating to employment and education, as well as increasing graduation rates for students with disabilities to reach their post-school outcome goals. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you Jen Hilgendorf. Jen?
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you very much for joining today to talk about graduation in Wisconsin and what we can do as a team to help support students with disabilities in graduating from high school and reduce dropout rates. As Bonnie said, I work for the Transition Improvement Grant, and the Transition Improvement Grant is a discretionary grant from the Department of Public Instruction. We support increasing graduation rates and post-school outcomes for students with disabilities. And when I say post-school outcomes, what I'm talking about is engagement in employment and post-secondary education, as well as being independent within the communities in which our graduates live in. We do this work through directly working with school districts and collaborating with family resource groups to provide professional development and ongoing coaching support in evidence-based practices that increase graduation rate as well as increase post-school outcomes. So I was very excited to be able to join today and talk about some of the evidence-based practices that we know occur to help support students with disabilities graduating. So let's first start by talking about why do graduation rates matter. We know that successful completion of high school is a critical prerequisite to success after high school. Youth who have a high school diploma are considered for jobs that are not even open to those who do not have a diploma. Many post-secondary education or training opportunities will also require a high school diploma for a student. Therefore, students who do not graduate from high school typically experience much lower rates of employment, increasingly lower incomes, and we are seeing higher rates of incarceration. We know that students with disabilities have lower high school completion rates than their classmates without disabilities currently in Wisconsin. We also know that there are achievement gaps between youth in Wisconsin that are white and those relating to different races. So our youth who are Black, Hispanic, and American Indian are graduating at lower rates than their white peers. Knowing this information and knowing the importance of graduation, that is why it's important that we are working together to increase our graduation rates. So as we think about increasing our graduation rates, we know that while it is important for school districts, it's also important for the community in which youth live in. If the state of Wisconsin could increase their graduation rate by 1%, that would mean that we would see 50 new jobs. We would see increased earnings of up to $12.4 million. We would see increased federal tax revenue and increased state and local tax revenue. The state of Wisconsin would also save $16.6 million on health care, and we would support the economy by increasing spending to $9.4 million. And these statistics were taken from the graduation effect, which is a subgroup of the Alliance for Excellent Education. They yearly look into the graduation rate in states and then also break down into parts of the state and can identify that if we could increase our graduation rate to 90%, what we would be able to do with our economy. So it's important to know that graduation rate, while it's very important for the youth who are graduating, as well as the school districts, it's also important for the community around us. So this is not something that should be only talked about in schools or only talked about in families who have youth that may be struggling. It should be something that is talked about in a community at large, because that is how we are going to see effective change. In the presentation, if you would like to see these statistics on an infographic, all you need to do is click on this link, the graduation effect, and it will bring you to an infographic that has all that information. And that can be very helpful as you're thinking about what are steps that you can do to help support. This might be something that you want to share with state and district leaders to support the development and implementation of policies or approaches that can increase high school graduation rate. And it can also help support you to be an advocate for graduation for all. So then as we're thinking about graduation rate for students, this isn't something that we only start thinking about in high school. We know that graduation can be discussed and can be supported in much earlier grades. We know that dropping out of high school is not a process, or is a process, I apologize. It's not a single event. So a student, when they are 17 years old, do not just decide to drop out of high school. There are steps and events that lead up to that happening. And it's important for us as educators and families to be able to identify if students may be at risk of dropping out much earlier. Research out of the Everyone Graduates Center done by Richard Balfans tells us that early predictors can be identified as early as 6th grade if a student is going to be at risk of dropping out, which provides teams then the opportunity to have some of this discussion and begin providing critical interventions much earlier so that we can work together to support students. These teams should make, it's very important that families and students be a part of these teams. Again, not just the school-based team. So not just teachers, administrators, and support staff, but families and students as well. So then let's talk about what some of the early indicators are. We know engagement is a big piece of students staying in school, and that means that they're engaged in the classes and the offerings that are going on in school. We can track engagement through attendance. So attendance in school is an indicator of graduation. So if students are not attending school, then they are at a greater risk of dropping out of high school. We also know that behavior plays a role in students' success in middle and high school. So days removed from school because of a disciplinary infraction, and then also the number of referrals, suspensions, or expulsions that occur for students. And the final early indicator category that we know is course performance and academic achievement. So as we think about the number of passing courses that a student has, and also looking at the number of D's and F's that a student may have, as well as performance on statewide assessments. These all together help us to understand each student's indicators of if they are struggling and if we need to provide direct interventions. So the Department of Public Instruction took this research and built what is called the Dropout Early Warning System. And this is something that school-based teams can access through their WISE Dash for districts. This Dropout Early Warning System starts in 6th grade and is updated yearly through 9th grade. The reason why we utilize this is having this understanding will help to frame the work of what students could benefit from additional interventions or supports, and what students they can identify may need some additional targeted support. So as we think about the Dropout Early Warning System, we know 2 statements. Students cannot learn if they're not in school, and students cannot learn if they are not connected to people within the school. So as we think about these 4 categories, those tie directly into those statements. In the upper left-hand side, you see mobility. in the pink box. So this would be movement between schools. And if students are in a large district, that even means movement between schools within their district. We know that if students are switching schools frequently throughout the year or have made even one school change during the previous year, that they have to go through again building relationships within their school, understanding the school climate and community, and then building that comfort level to be able to begin learning. So we know that students who move between schools, they are at a more elevated risk of dropping out of high school. In the box to the right, you see discipline in blue. We know that students who are removed from instruction due to disciplinary infractions are going to be at a higher rate for dropping out. So therefore, discovering ways to deal with student discipline issues in more structured ways for students to be able to change their behavior and return to class would be beneficial to the student. In the bottom left-hand side, we see a yellow box that says attendance, and of course, this stands for attendance during the school year. So this would be any excused or unexcused absences that take the student out of school would increase the risk for dropping out. And then finally, in the green box to the bottom right, we see academic achievement. So this would be where the district can track students' performance on statewide assessments. And what it does is it compares students to their peers and the normative score that is given on a statewide assessment. So the dropout early warning system pulls all of this information together, and it gives us a percentage. And what that percentage tells us would be the percentage opportunity that the student will graduate within 4 years once they get to high school. So this data piece is very important because it gives teams the opportunity to begin talking about, are there students who may be at risk of dropping out? This is not the be-all end-all. This is a place to start conversations. So it further shows us that it's important for students to be in school and having the opportunity to learn and feel connected. But then it also gives us the opportunity to have discussions about how we can make that happen for students who might not be having those opportunities at this time. Bonnie, now would be a good time. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
We don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So then I had mentioned and alluded to a couple of times how this data and understanding students as a whole can help us to then dive into different interventions or supports specifically for students who might be at a higher risk of not completing high school within 4 years. So we pull a lot of our work from the National Dropout Prevention Center, and they are a clearinghouse of evidence-based practices regarding ways to increase graduation rate for youth. In 2015, they did a meta-analysis that was identifying interventions that had the best outcomes for increasing high school completion. So you see on the screen a blue column that says excellent, and then you see on the right a green column that says promising. From the meta-analysis, we know that these interventions that you see here have been the most effective in helping to support students graduating from high school. And they go from the top down as the most successful. So we know career development and job training is our #1 intervention, followed by family engagement, mentoring, behavioral interventions, and then literacy development. All of these have excellent outcomes for increasing graduation. I put an arrow by the family engagement because I think that's an important piece to talk about. Is again, it brings me back to what I said at the beginning of the webinar, that teams cannot just be school-based alone. However, we need to look at families as experts in their son or daughter and providing different knowledge than a school-based team would be able to bring. So engaging families in a graduation plan for students is very, very critically important. You also see in the promising side, again, that work-based learning, having strong school and classroom environments for students, service learning, and then a focus on health and wellness. For more information on these interventions, more specifically, you can visit the National Dropout Prevention Center website, And they have resources as well as webinars and toolkits that guide you through these different interventions. So as said before, family engagement has a direct impact on students completing high school. The National Parent-Teacher Association has identified the following benefits of family engagement in education. We know that when parents are involved, students achieve more, regardless of socioeconomic status, ethnic or racial backgrounds, or the parent's education level. We know the more extensive family involvement is, the higher student achievement is. We know that when families are involved in their students' education, those students have higher grades, higher test scores, better attendance, and complete homework more consistently. We know families who are involved, we see students exhibiting more positive attitudes and behavior towards learning. Students whose families are involved in their lives have higher graduation rates and greater enrollment rates in post-secondary education, and that includes college, technical education, as well as short-term training programs. We know different types of family involvement produce different gains. To have long-lasting gains for students, family involvement activities must be well-planned, inclusive, and include all families, and comprehensive. We know educators who hold higher expectations of students. Let me repeat that. We know that educators hold higher expectations of students whose parents or families collaborate with the teacher, and they also hold higher opinions of those families. In programs that are designed to involve families in full partnerships, student achievement for disadvantaged children not only improve, it can also reach levels that are standard for middle-class children. In addition, youth who are the farthest behind make the greatest gains. Students who demonstrate behaviors such as alcohol use, violence, and antisocial behaviors, we see those behaviors decrease when there is an increase in family involvement. Students are more likely to fall behind in academic performance if their families do not participate in school events, develop a working relationship with their child's educators, or keep up with what's happening in their child's school. The benefits of involving families are not confined to the early years. We also know there are significant gains at all ages and grade levels. We know that junior and senior high school students whose parents remain involved make better transitions between middle school and high school, as well as better transitions from high school to post-secondary learning opportunities or employment, maintain a higher quality of their work, and develop realistic plans for their future. We also know that students whose families are not involved, on the other hand, are more likely to drop out. And for us, the most accurate predictor of student achievement in school is not the income or social status of a student. However, it is to the extent in which a student's family is able to create a home environment that encourages learning, communicate high yet reasonable expectations for their child's achievement and future careers, and finally become involved in their children's education at school and in the community. So this really shows us that family involvement is key throughout the years. It helps to set that anchor for learning, and it helps to set those high expectations for students, which we know is very, very important. Given this information, the Annenberg Foundation and the National Center for Families Learning created an educator or family toolkit to guide increasing the climate, communication, building of relationships, and engagement in learning. So what we're going to do is go through the sections of the toolkit and talk about what it is that we can do. So we're going to talk about what can families do to help support increasing these 4 areas, and then also what can schools do to support increasing these 4 areas. If you want to see the entire toolkit that was created from the National Centers for Family Learning, you can click on this link right here in the middle, and it will bring you to the toolkit. So as we jump into this, we're first going to talk about setting a climate for learning. This is thinking about that routine. As from the family perspective, when is homework or schoolwork done? Who supports your son or daughter with their homework? How do you model learning for them? How do you model that it's okay to make mistakes? And how do you model that you are growing as a person? Are you doing any new learning in front of your son or daughter? This is really the process of bringing learning to the forefront at home. Now, when we think about it from the perspective of schools, how welcoming are you to new learning at school? How do you help to support students in making mistakes and feeling comfortable in making mistakes? The work that students are bringing home, how are you supporting families to be able to do this? And let's also think about that in the virtual world that we are in now, because many of the school districts in the state of Wisconsin no longer are going to face-to-face school, but are meeting virtually or have a hybrid model where they're at least meeting virtually for part of the day. How is the instruction and the work relating to the instruction that you're providing students helping to support families in being able to support them in doing that? Do you know what are the best ways to engage all family members? So these are some things that you would want to think about as you are thinking about how you're setting a climate for learning for youth. It's important, again, for that learning to be moved to the forefront. It's important for us to be able to support youth and be most effective in going through their homework and feeling comfortable in making mistakes. And the way that we can do that is not only model that for them, but also provide that supportive relationship between school and home to make that more meaningful for you. Are there any questions on this first category?
There's just one question that we have here, and that's, can this toolkit be used effectively for parents of all cultural backgrounds?
Yeah, so when I had gone through this research, and you'll see this in some of the other categories, it does take into account making sure that we're using culturally responsive practices with youth. So I think, yes, that you would be able to use this with all cultural backgrounds.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so let's go on to the second category, which is strong and effective communication. Strong and effective communication is important to be able to have those crucial conversations with not only students, but also family. And these are the conversations that are going to be critical for the growth of students. Are you able to talk about areas of struggle, areas of needed growth, or positive things that can help students grow? So that's thinking about it from the perspective of both families and schools. I would pose that question. But now let's talk about what are things that each group can do. So as we look at the family side on the left, how do you talk to your child about school? Do you use the opportunity to ask questions in a way that promotes communication? So this would be those open-ended questions, not just saying, do you like school? Yes or no, but having them answer questions that they would need to expand upon and have discussion, so you can not only get a better understanding of what's going on in school, but then this also promotes communication. Do you listen to what they're saying? Are you pulling out when they are struggling or when they have questions? And are you reaching out then to school staff to get those questions answered or get the support that they need? And I guess the second piece of that is, how comfortable are you reaching out to school staff? Do you feel that you're being heard by the people that you're reaching out to, or do you feel that it's uncomfortable and you're not getting the answers that you need, or that you feel like you might be being judged? From the school perspective then, do you communicate in the best way for every parent? Not every family is going to want the same communication style. So do you reach out and get a good understanding of what's the best way to communicate, and work to what the expectations are of the family so that they feel comfortable communicating back and forth? And then the next question would be, do you evaluate your communication with each family? So does your communication provide an opportunity to build rapport and relationships? So looking on the family side, there isn't that uncomfort level of reaching out and asking some of those hard questions. And in addition, Do you assess if your communication is regular so that families can expect it, is purposeful, so there's meaning behind it, and there are next steps that both sides can take, and effective, that you are giving them the information that they need and they feel that they're getting the questions answered that they need. So we don't want that communication to just be negative, calling when a student is struggling or doing bad, but we want the opportunity for schools and families to connect in the communication mode that is going to work best for them. And in the, also when we say that, we also mean in the language that is going to be most effective for the family to communicate. And is there that opportunity to build rapport and relationships? So if you do have to use a translator, what are some different ways that you are reaching out to build rapport with those families as well? So it's very important that schools take the opportunity to think about that and assess communication. And I would say even the same on the family side, assess that communication that you have with your son or daughter's teacher, any service providers that they have, or any other people that you reach out to in the school. Are there relationships that you would like to build upon, and what might be ways to do that? Are there any questions on the development of strong and effective communication?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So the next then goes deeper into that idea of building relationships. James Cormer put it best when he said, no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship first. So we need to make sure that we're building respectful relationships. And that doesn't mean that we need to be, buddy-buddy with the student or the family, but it means that teachers and families both need to insist on high quality work and offer support to be able to make that happen. So as we're thinking about building relationships, let's start first with the family side. Is there a way that you can connect with your child when they are learning so that they would feel comfortable coming to you if they have questions or they don't understand something or something is challenging for them? Do you see yourself as the most important teacher in your son or daughter's life? You were their first teacher and you will continue to be their most important teacher throughout their life. So do you have the comfort to be able to challenge them in questions that they might have, push on them and hold high expectations, but then also reach out if you don't know the answer? And then the final question would be, what opportunities for growth do you see at school to help support your child? So are there opportunities that are going on through the school, both face-to-face when we have that opportunity, but also virtually, to be able to connect with the learning that they're doing in school? So are there math or reading nights that you can participate in? Are you attending parent-teacher conferences? Are you attending different offerings that the school provides to be able to grow an understanding of what is going on in the education of your son or daughter? And then when we think about it from the school side, how are you engaging families and making them feel comfortable to be a teacher to their child? Are you looking at all families through an asset-based lens, meaning that we see the strengths that all families bring to the education of their son or daughter? Do you recognize and support different levels of parental involvement? So meeting the families where they're at and helping them to be engaged in their son or daughter's education. Do you acknowledge that families know what's best for their son or daughter? And that might be culturally different than what we as educators might see as best. When I say we, I should say what you as an educator, not we, what you as an educator see as best. It might differ from what the family sees as best. Are you comfortable having those conversations? And are you acknowledging the fact that the families know their child the best because they've been with them and they might have different experiences than ones that you have had? And then finally, do you create multiple opportunities for families to feel successful? So are you reaching out to them when you're starting a new unit and helping them understand what is being discussed? Are you having the opportunity to reach out to families whose son or daughter might be struggling in reading or math and provide them some things that they could be working on at home together to increase their skill level? That communication and those relationships are so important. And then finally, are you seeing your families as coming to the table as an asset and really bringing the knowledge that we need about children to the team? Are there any questions on the building relationships component?
I think it goes back to the question that was asked previously, and that's, many parents struggle with, doing the everyday tasks and maybe working and getting things, food on the table for their kids. How can a school reach some of those parents?
Sure. So I think the first piece is making the connection with parents individually and talking about what is the best way to have that communication and getting that understanding first so that you know what is expected, what the family is looking for, and then you know what is going to be the best way to communicate with them. And then when you have that understanding in that discussion, share with them that you are going to be sharing different strategies or different supports that they can do, and think about them as, are there quick things that they can do at home? Are there ways that they can build climate for learning within their house? It doesn't necessarily have to be that the family is sitting next to them the entire time, but have some discussions. And you might not need to have all the answers for families, but have some discussions with them about the importance of building that climate for learning and being able to communicate with their son or daughter. I'm going to share in a little while, share a resource with you too, a video that we made for families on supporting graduation rate, and that might be something that you consider sharing with them. But I think the most important piece, and we do know this from research as well, is establishing the best way to communicate with each family.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, so then the final category that we're going to talk about is engagement in learning. And think about this as building those experiences for students to become learners, to learn how to be good learners, and to be able to see this modeling occur from families. So when we think about this from the family perspective, do you provide experiences for your child that support their learning? Do you give them the opportunity to ask questions, to make mistakes? And do you take advantage of sharing and learning in everyday routines with your child? So one example of this might be, if they come to the grocery store with you, do you talk about budgeting? Do you talk about healthy eating? Do you talk about using like a shopping list to be able to organize how you're going through the aisles? All of those are lessons that we can engage youth in to learn and to see that learning is so much larger than just what they're doing in school, but it's something that will continue on throughout their lives. And then from the perspective of school, how are you determining the best way to engage parents? So if you have like a math night and you have families who are not attending or who are not engaging in that work, are you reaching out to them and getting a better idea for maybe why they didn't participate? Is it a comfort level? Is it a time level? Is it that they don't feel that that's meaningful to them? And then are you meeting that on a case-by-case basis rather than lumping a group of families together and saying, well, they didn't come, so they must not care about their child's education? So I think looking at it again by that case-by-case basis is very important to be able to engage all families in learning. And then the other piece, how do you support parents or families who need ideas on engaging their child in education? When families come to you and are struggling with ways to engage their child in education, are you having some conversation with them? Maybe some coaching around what are you doing? Asking some questions about how are you building those routines? How are you building those structures? Are you being consistent? Asking those questions to help support them feeling comfortable in engaging their son or daughter within their education. Those, I think, are the big pieces, because we know that engagement that stays strong from elementary all the way through high school happens because families and schools work together to set high expectations for you. So are you working together as a team to make that happen? Are there any questions on the final piece of that toolkit?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now I'm going to bring you into some of the resources that we have through the Transition Improvement Grant. And I'm going to try to open them up and actually show them to you. So I hope that that will provide you the opportunity to take a better look at the resources, but then get an understanding of how they can help support. So we have 5 different resources right now that can be utilized by schools or families to increase graduation rate for youth with disabilities. This top right-hand side, you see these 4 graduation caps. This is our Raising the Cap series. Are you able to see the TIG website now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so in our Graduation for All tab on the top left-hand side, we have what is called a Raising the Cap series. What this is it is a tool that can be utilized by schools or by family groups who are supporting schools to get a better understanding of the evidence-based practices that can increase graduation rate. I'm going to open one of them up. And it is going to ask you to either create an account on our website or you can continue as a guest. And it's the 4th series down called Raising the Cap. And what it is it's a video as well as a toolkit that you can use to grow your knowledge in different evidence-based practices. So the ones that we have available right now are using data analysis to drive interventions. So this would be looking at some of those early warning systems and other student data to identify interventions to support students in increasing graduation rate. We have one on increasing student outcomes through mentoring relationships. We have a session on leveraging community relationships to engage students. So looking at different agencies and different support groups throughout your community that can also engage students. We have one that's focused on building strong family partnerships to support graduation. So digs deeper into that, building that strong team to increase students' learning and build high expectations. We have one around career and technical education. And then we have one more focused towards school districts or support teams, but developing a shared mission and vision. We also have what are called resource overviews. So rather than a full section on an evidence-based practice, this goes directly into one resource that is shared from one of our state or national partners that can support increasing graduation rates. So knowing that right now, many school districts are either meeting virtually or in a hybrid model where they're not face-to-face all the time. We put together one on e-mentoring. So if you are digging into some of those mentoring relationships and you have to do that more virtually, this might be a toolkit that can help move you through that. And then we also have one, our newest one is on one of our tools that I'll show you in just a moment, which is the Graduation Rate Improvement Plan. So all of these can be found on the TIG website, and you can get to them by first just clicking that picture of the graduation caps in the presentation. But this, again, walks you through evidence-based practices, gives you an engagement activity, and allows you to learn about the different research and see examples from different school districts around the nation and how they're implementing that for students. So any questions on the Raising the Cap series?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next, I mentioned before, the Graduation Rate Improvement Planning Tool. So what this is it is a tool that can be utilized by districts to pull a team together and assess their district-wide data relating to graduation and dropout rate for students with disabilities, but then also take a look at their dropout early warning system and identify students who could benefit from some evidence-based interventions. And then what it allows them to do then is go through and create or participate in a needs assessment and identify what evidence-based practices are in place and what evidence-based practices the team would like to grow in. And then they're able to select some high priority practices to be able to implement to support graduation rate. and then build an action plan to support that. So all of the research behind the different evidence-based practices are all available in this, and then it provides you a tool to be able to get a better understanding of how to implement that. As you look across the bottom, I'm going to start on the far right-hand side. This is the graduation rate improvement plan research and support resources. Again, probably more supportive for a school district. However, families, again, feel free to utilize this resource as well. What this is it is all of the research pulled together that creates our graduation rate improvement plan, and it's broken down to make it more accessible for teams. So it looks at 4 different highly effective areas in increasing graduation rates. So school leadership and district-wide diagnostics, family and community relationships, student and educator learning supports, and then finally, effective instruction and targeted interventions. So I'm going to select the family and community relationships, and it's going to bring me to that section. And it's actually going to give me the cited research around why family engagement is important. Much of this we just discussed in the presentation, but then it is also going to bring me to information around different resources and different research that I can use. So there's 3 different categories. There's effective strategies, and what this is this would be all of the evidence-based practices that are cited through our national and statewide partners. It gives me the citation, but then it also provides me an overview of what I could find within that research. So again, this might be utilized for school districts as they're starting to push for new interventions or new programs within their school and need to provide the research backing behind this. This is available in this section. There is also resources to increase outcomes. So this would be any toolkits, any resource guides, any videos or activities that youth or families can engage in to increase one of the predictors that we talked about. So if we're looking to increase family engagement, we might check into some of these resources, and you would be able to bring these back to the school, and this would help you start implementing or starting a program that is founded in the evidence-based practices. And then finally, we have a practices and action section. And what this is we got a lot of feedback from schools saying that they were looking for examples of how other school districts or other agencies around the state or nation are implementing that same practice. So what this is these are actually examples from different school districts, different states, or different agencies, and how they're actually implementing the program. So it gives teams the opportunity to learn from others. Again, this probably is a resource that would be more utilized by school districts, but wanted to share it on here because it directly ties to the GRIP. So can I answer any questions on the GRIP or the graduation rate improvement planning research support and resources tool?
Just a comment about the GRIP, and the comment is that the person had not seen this particular thing, and it looks like it would be a valuable resource for school districts to use.
Absolutely. So it really gives that opportunity for some structured planning. First, founding it, or like looking through the data, then doing a needs assessment, and then doing an action plan. So if you do want to learn more about that, please feel free to reach out. I believe they have my contact information. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so please feel free to just reach out, and I'd be happy to talk more at length about that and even walk you through what that looks like in the plan side if that's something that you're looking to engage in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now these 2 tools on the bottom are more geared towards families and students. So as we look, I'm sure many of you have seen the Wisconsin Transition app, which allows students to go through and advocate for what their post-secondary transition plan will look like. And the reason why I put this in here as a as a tool that can be used to help support graduation rate is we know that youth who are able to advocate for their post-secondary goals have a higher graduation rate because they have done some exploration and have a stronger understanding in what they need to do to be able to meet their post-secondary goals. We also know that families who have the opportunity to complete and go through the app, it gives them the opportunity to share their hopes and dreams for their son or daughter, and it gives the school the opportunity to get the perspective of a family member when sometimes that can be lost during IEP meetings. So what we would ask that you do is have all families and have all students go through the Wisconsin Transition app prior to an IEP meeting. This asks them questions about what are their goals for once they leave high school, what are services that they feel that they might need, and it helps them work to design their post-secondary transition plan, which is a part of their IEP. So, we have been promoting greatly that youth participate in this, but this would also be an opportunity for families to also complete this and send it to the school teacher, because that really takes into account some of those culturally responsive and linguistically responsive practices that we were talking about that help us to understand culture of different families and help us to understand goals of what the family is hoping for their son or daughter. So you can access the app here. It's also available for download in the iTunes Store and the Google Play Store. And I know that there is, in addition, a webinar that Facets is doing on the Wisconsin Transition app. So I'm not going to go into great detail. However, if you have questions prior to participating in the Facets webinar, please, again, feel free to reach out and I can connect you to our person who supports the self-advocacy suite within our grant. And then the final one that I have on here is a new resource that we created last year. It's just 5 minutes in length, and it's a video for families. It goes through some of that background information that I had talked about on some of the beginning slides. It talks about why graduation is important. It talks about some of the discrepancies that we see in the state of Wisconsin with relating to graduation rate. And then it talks through that National Center for Families Learning Toolkit in more of a brief way, but would be a great way to start some of those conversations with family members for why graduation is important and why families are part of the team for increasing graduation rate for their son or daughter. So any questions I can answer on any of these resources?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Oops. And then the final slide I was hoping to share was a short video. I'm not going to be able to share it today just because we're having some trouble with the sound. However, this was a PSA created by NEA talking about why graduation is so important. So it's by youth for youth about why graduation is important and provide some of that research again that I cited at the beginning, but does it in a way that makes it meaningful and connects with youth. So again, this is linked in the presentation. If you'd like to use this video, it's just 30 seconds long, but this would be a great way to engage youth in understanding the importance of graduation rate. So that is all that I have for you guys today. I just want to leave it open if there are any additional questions or any other comments that people would like to share.
We don't have any other questions at this time, but maybe, Jen, you can reiterate your contact information for anybody who did not access it.
Sure, absolutely. So I will give you guys my email. It is JHILGENDORF, so J Hilgendorf at CESA, which is CESA 1.K12.wi.us. In addition, I'm just going to show you, if you go to our grants website, which is witig.org. There's a contact button at the top. Here you can find our contact information. I'm right here, Jen Hilgendorf, and my contact is here, as well as my office number and my cell number. Feel free to reach out to either. And then if you are looking for more information related to transition practices around the state, and you can click what CSER you are on, and it would bring you directly then to the coordinator who is supporting that region. So again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I can either answer them or put you in contact with the person who would be able to answer them. Or if you are looking more regionally, feel free to come on here and find their contact information as well. So thank you very much for spending some time with me today, talking about graduation rates and things that we can do as a team to increase graduation rates. And again, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you very much, Jen. I know that I learned a tremendous amount, and that the resources that you provided are great resources for us to be able to go to at a later date. So we definitely appreciate that. This will conclude our webinar. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and please be reminded that Wisconsin Facets has many trainings and webinars still on the calendar for 2020. Please feel free to sign up for any that you may be interested in. And please also remember that we will have a 2021 calendar for you up shortly on our website. We'd like to again thank Jen today and thank everybody for joining us. Look out, please, for the short evaluation that'll be coming your way after the live presentation. Have a good day, everybody. Stay safe and be well. Bye-bye now.